Dean Lockhart to speak to and move Amendment 1539.1 for up to 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The fiscal framework now means that the size of the Scottish Government budget will in large part be determined by the performance of Scotland's economy relative to the rest of the UK. For the past 11 years under the SNP, Scottish economic growth has been an average of 0.7%, what the Fraser-Vounder has described as the longest period of low growth in 60 years and half the rate of UK economic growth. The Scottish Fiscal Commission is forecasting another 5 years of Scotland's economy underperforming the rest of the UK, and this will have a significantly negative impact on the Scottish budget. So here we have it. After 11 years of SNP government, we have a low growth, low productivity and low wage economy. We have an SNP government that has failed to meet every one of its own 7 economic targets. Scotland is now the highest tax part of the UK, for workers earning over £26,000 and for businesses looking to expand. We have the lowest business creation rates in the UK, and we have seen a series of large-scale business failures referred to in Labour's motion, showing that the SNP's enterprise policy is not working. Presiding Officer, it doesn't have to be this way. Scotland's long-term economic growth rate is above 2%, and we, on this side of the chamber, believe that Scottish economic growth can return to those levels. But to do so, we need a new direction in economic policy, and perhaps Derek Mackay is about to tell us what his new economic policy will be.
Derek Mackay.
Well, Dean Lockhart's just mentioned there is a different path. Can I ask, will Brexit assist GDP growth or be a disadvantage to GDP growth?
Dean Lockhart.
Is that Brexit applies across all of the UK, and we're seeing the rest of the UK growing at far stronger rates than in Scotland. And the Cabinet Secretary should not try to use Brexit to blame his underperformance for the past 11 years, because the Scottish economy has underperformed for 11 years under the SNP. I need to make a bit of progress. We have long argued that the SNP's economic policy is not fit for purpose. The Fraser of Allender agrees. Late last year, the Fraser of Allender called for the SNP to change course when it said, let me make a bit of progress, Fraser of Allender said it's time the government looked again at its overall approach to economic policy. Commenting on Derek Mackay's so-called economic action plan, the Fraser of Allender said, where is the clarity? Where is the clarity of purpose that underpins what the government is trying to achieve? So our amendment to the Labour motion today indicates how the Scottish Government can deliver and change course on economic policy and deliver the high-paid jobs that everyone wants. The UK industrial strategy is the most far-reaching and ambitious UK economic policy in decades. Under the UK industrial strategy, £50 billion of funding will be made available for research and development, investment in new technology and the commercialisation of innovation across the UK. It makes available a scale of investment for Scotland's economic development that would not be possible in a standalone Scottish economic policy. Investment of scale, additional R&D, global expertise is precisely what many of Scotland's new innovative industries need to scale up, including life sciences, low carbon and fintech. And according to the Scotch Whisky Association, the UK industrial strategy presents an opportunity for the Scotch whisky industry to flourish as a flagship manufacturer and exporter. I will in a second. And to address Richard Leonard's concerns over neoliberalism, the UK industrial strategy is about creating higher paid jobs. It is not trickle-down economics. I'll give way.
Jamie Hepburn.
I just wonder if Mr Lockhart can explain if the UK's approach to research and development policy is so much better than Scotland's. Why in 2017 R&D spend here in Scotland increased by 13.9%, but in the UK as a whole it only increased by 2.9%.
Dean Lockhart.
I think you'll find that over the last 11 years, R&D across the UK as a whole has been higher in Scotland on business research and development. So, Presiding Officer, to fully capitalise on these opportunities under the UK industrial strategy and to create the high-paid jobs the Scottish economy needs, the government should incorporate elements of the UK industrial strategy into its economic policy and work closely with the UK government to deliver the full benefits. We have also long argued that increasing the tax gap between Scotland and the rest of the UK will damage the economy. Scotland needs to be able to attract the brightest and the best from around the world. This is important not just to address the skills gap in highly skilled sectors, but we need to attract more higher paid workers to strengthen Scotland's tax base. The Finance Committee has heard evidence that for every 20 new additional rate taxpayers in Scotland, the Scottish Government would get an extra £1 million in tax revenue, meaning that if we can attract 2,000 new additional rate taxpayers to Scotland, the Scottish Government budget will get an extra £100 million a year in tax revenue. But instead of trying to attract those higher paid workers to Scotland, the SNP is doing exactly the opposite by making Scotland the highest tax part of the UK for those workers. So it's time for the SNP to listen to leading organisations such as the Scottish Life Sciences Association and reverse its policy of increasing the tax gap between Scotland and the rest of the UK. In the area of enterprise and skills policy, Scotland spends £2.5 billion a year on enterprise. That's more than 50% higher than the rest of the UK, but we're seeing business development rates and economic growth lower than the rest of the UK. And last year, this Parliament passed a motion recognising the problem of a cluttered enterprise landscape. However, instead of streamlining the enterprise landscape, the SNP has created another two quangos, the Strategic Board and the Scottish National Investment Bank, and it's still not clear how those bodies will help streamline the enterprise landscape. And that's why we're calling for the enterprise landscape to be streamlined. It needs real leadership from the Scottish Government, and taxpayers need to see a better return for their investment. Presiding Officer, government policy also needs to prepare Scotland for a digital future. At the Economy Committee, we heard that only 9% of business in Scotland have embedded digital in their business operations. That compares with 43% of business in other countries. This digital gap presents a massive challenge for companies that are looking to increase their exports. The global export market is increasingly dominated by e-commerce and digital platforms, and Scottish business will lose out on those trading opportunities if we do not address this digital gap. That's why we're calling for the establishment of a dedicated Institute of E-commerce, a specialist public agency in Scotland that would help move large and small businesses online in order to take advantage of global opportunities in e-commerce and get the Scottish economy ready for a digital future. Let me wrap up, Presiding Officer. We've heard yet again that the Cabinet Secretary will attempt to hide his 11-year economic failure by blaming Brexit. But the reality is the SNP has been in charge of Scotland's economy for 11 long years, and they've turned it into a low-growth, low-productivity and low-wage economy. And that is why it is time for a new direction in Scotland's economic policy. I move the amendment in my name.
I call Patrick